to ignore the three gentlemen on this end of the table. My question seemed to aim more at Ms. Dorfman and Mr. Wilson. If the both of you, on the chance that there are entrepreneurs out there watching this program today, what advice would you give? Someone's baking cookies, whatever, on where they should go. They're having trouble getting credit. They're balancing the books or not balancing the books. What would you tell the entrepreneur today? Where to start looking for those lines of credit? Mr. Wilson, would you tell them, come into the bank, check and see? Ms. Dorfman, what would you tell them? SBA, if you could touch on that.
Please.
Well, first of all, most of our members are more what we call the mid-level businesses. They're manufacturers, technology, professional services, a lot of construction folks. So their challenges are quite a bit different than what you're referring to as a startup. And the startup, there are resources out there, the small business development centers. They could stop in and start the process of understanding how to start a business and what's needed to move forward. I think with the businesses that we deal with, it's been very difficult because they have relationships with their banks and their banks have just cut them off. And that's the issue. And another example you had mentioned, loosen up the rules of creditworthiness. Well, in a cyclical world, which many of our members operate in, they know that they're going to get the check in 30 or 60 or 90 days, but that's not going to fulfill what the bank has to, from a regulatory standpoint. So they're not able to access that credit for that short term to really be able to pay their employees and keep the business going, and that's the challenge.
Great, thank you. Mr. Wilson, any comment on what you'd tell the person out there, the business owner?
A couple things. Number one, I would not give up. I think that a lot of businesses that are in difficulty have not tried to access the SBA programs. That's one important way to go. Another thing is when you're talking to your community bank that you've worked with for a long time, if that's your relationship, and they tell you that they think building that new building or doing whatever is a bad idea because of numbers, cash flow, etc., I would suggest that they listen. And it's a very difficult time right now. And while we want the economy to grow and prosper, individual businesses must be very cautious at this point in time because if they're not, survival becomes an issue.
Thank you all very much. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, in your testimony you note that the economic disruption are now affecting commercial real estate and small business lending. Do you believe that small businesses will have greater access to financing if the TARP were used to purchase or guarantee a broader class of loans, including commercial real estate and small business loans?
I do indeed. If we expand that program to guarantee not just mortgage loans, but to guarantee commercial real estate and small business loans, there's no doubt that that would provide more access to credit. There are a number of things that I had in my testimony, the SBA, what Congressman Chabot referred to as accounting standards. Anything that provides more liquidity to the banking system is going to make them more able and more willing to lend.
Mr. Wilson, but I believe that Congress has given the authority to the Secretary of the Treasury to use TARP and extend it to include commercial real estate and small business loans.
That program is not in place, to my knowledge, at the present time.
Well, they're working on regulations, but what I'm saying is we do not have to revisit the law that we passed because the authority is already there. And we will work with the Treasury for them to understand that it will be an important tool for small businesses.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, you mentioned that many rural Americans and small businesses, as a result of the current crisis, are losing faith in our economic system. Why do you believe that there is a crisis of confidence?
Thank you. The rural Americans, frankly, are looking for solutions to the problem rather than handouts. The example I would use, and I'll use both construction and agriculture, and I think I can speak for the gentleman to my right, we would much rather have markets restored, a vibrancy of the competitive environment that we can continue to do what we do best, rather than many of the programs that are being discussed. Rural America doesn't see or feel often these programs impacting them. And I'm not an accurate historian, but I'm going to use an example. 20 years ago, when Japan went through a similar housing situation, they, meaning the central government, did not allow unemployment to exceed 6%. They invested hugely in roads and bridges and dams and other areas that continued business in all locales of the economy. So bottom line for rural Americans, it's kind of that tangible. Let's do something that is proactive and positive rather than just dole out money.
Mr. Chabot, do you have any other question? I just would like to ask my last question to any of the members of the panel. As you know, there are discussions here about a second stimulus package, and I hear you, Mr. Brown, but maybe other members of the panel have other opinions regarding any type of proactive action taken through a second stimulus package. If we do have the opportunity to work on a second stimulus package, what will be, you will tell Congress, should be the first or top priority regarding any second stimulus package? Mr. Wilson.
You have a very difficult task there. You're riding a very thin line between knowing when to stimulate the economy and not creating future problems. If you overstimulate the economy, if you do more than you have to do now, and I'm not saying that you are, it's just a challenge you face, we're going to face increasing inflationary pressures in the future. We're going to increase the national debt in the future. So we're passing on to future generations what we do today. It's important to get the economy moving again. It's important that you look at things like additional packages, stimulation packages, but be cautious, be careful, because you don't want to overget it.
Any other comment from any of the other members?